They built their fame on fixing things. Broken down houses, sagging porches, kitchens nobody thought could be saved. For over a decade, Chip and Joanna Gaines made it look easy. Buy the wreck, tear out the ugly, reveal the dream home, roll credits. But somewhere along the way, the thing that actually needed fixing wasn't a house at all. It was harder than that. It was themselves, their marriage, and eventually, their place in a culture that suddenly didn't know what to do with them. This is the real story, not the rumor mill version, not the invented tragedy, of what Chip and Joanna Gaines have actually said, in their own words, about the year their empire was tested. Long before Magnolia was a brand people recognized from a Target end cap, Joanna Stevens was a communications student who grew up the daughter of a tire shop owner in Waco, Texas. Chip Gaines was a business major with more hustle than plan, flipping houses to make rent after a baseball career that never quite took off. They met, married in 2003, and immediately did what young broke couples do, improvised. They opened a small store called The Little Shop on Bosque, and by their own account, the first 12 years of their marriage were a genuine struggle. Not a cute, made-for-TV struggle. A real one. Money was tight. The business nearly closed more than once. They were building a life and a company at the same time, with almost no cushion between the two. What's notable, hearing them describe it now, is that they don't pretend it was easy or that love alone smoothed it over. Joanna has said plainly that she and Chip had non-negotiables from day one. Even while they were struggling through those early years, a kind of quiet agreement about what they wouldn't let the stress cost them. That distinction mattered later, because when the business exploded, they'd already had over a decade of practice holding a marriage together under financial pressure. It turned out they'd need that muscle again, just for a very different kind of pressure. Fixer Upper premiered on HGTV in 2013, and it did something few home renovation shows had managed. It made the hosts feel like people you actually knew. Chip's restlessness and jokes, Joanna's calm and eye for design, felt unscripted even when it wasn't. Within a couple of seasons, they weren't just TV hosts. They were a lifestyle brand. Magnolia Market at the Silos became a pilgrimage site in Waco. Their furniture and home goods landed in Target stores nationwide. Eventually, they built something bigger than a show, Magnolia Network, their own television network, which officially launched in January 2022. That kind of growth doesn't come free. Running a media company, a retail brand, and a family of 7 at the same time means the line between work and home doesn't just blur, it can disappear entirely. And that's exactly the tension Chip and Joanna started talking about publicly, once the empire was big enough that people wanted to know what it actually cost them. In July 2025, Magnolia Network premiered a new series called Back to the Frontier, which followed 3 modern families attempting to live without technology, homesteading style, the way people did in the 1800s. One of those families was Jason Hanna and Joe Riggs, a married same-sex couple raising 10-year-old twin sons. For most viewers, it was simply one more family among 3, doing the same chores and facing the same hardships as everyone else on the show. But for a segment of the Gaines' longtime audience, many of whom had followed the couple specifically because of their public Christian faith, the casting decision landed differently. Evangelist Franklin Graham, son of Billy Graham, posted publicly that he found the casting very disappointing, arguing that while people should be loved, that love should come with what he called the truth of Scripture on marriage. Other critics went further, accusing Chip and Joanna of abandoning the values that had built their audience in the first place. Chip didn't stay quiet for long. On July 13, 2025, he posted on X, writing that modern Christian culture seemed to find it too hard to simply talk, ask questions, and listen before judging. He added that it was a strange thing to watch people who don't share his faith get treated with more hostility from believers than from anyone else. He didn't name Graham directly. He didn't need to. The message was clearly aimed at the backlash itself, a defense not of a political position, but of the family that had trusted them enough to be on the show. For Chip and Joanna, whose entire public identity had been built around warmth, faith, and universal likability, this was new terrain. They had never really had to choose a side in a culture war before. Now they had, whether they framed it that way or not, and it cost them some goodwill with a portion of their audience while earning them praise from another. It's worth saying plainly, this wasn't a health crisis or a private tragedy. It was a public relations test, playing out in real time, over a casting decision on a reality show. And by most accounts, they weathered it by doing the one thing that had always worked for them: staying visible, staying calm, and refusing to apologize for the people they'd chosen to feature. Away from the controversy, Chip and Joanna have been surprisingly candid about a much quieter struggle: the ordinary, unglamorous difficulty of running a business together while raising 5 kids and staying married. In a July 2025 conversation on Don Saladino's Stronger podcast, Joanna talked about how hard it's been to find any real separation between business and marriage after more than 2 decades together. She's described trying to go on dates with Chip and simply ending up talking about the garden or the next project, because that's the language they share most fluently. It's not a complaint exactly. It's an honest admission that even a strong marriage doesn't automatically know how to turn work off. Chip has echoed the same idea in his own way. Speaking to People in mid-2025, he said that if the fame and the brand disappeared overnight and it was just him, Joanna, and the kids back on the farm, he'd be fine with that. But he was also clear that he doesn't think success and a healthy family life have to be in competition. "Joe and I believe we can have our cake and eat it too," he said, in the sense that he believes it's possible to be successful and still have a marriage and family that actually works. It's a modest claim, but a telling one. Not "we've figured it out," just "we think it's possible," which is a very different kind of confidence than the one they projected in their fixer-upper years. They've also talked about something more literal they did to reconnect: dance lessons. In 2024 and into 2025, Chip and Joanna hired a couple to come teach them to dance, something Joanna described as deeply awkward at first. Chip has joked that he didn't know where to put his hands, that making eye contact with his own wife of 20-plus years felt strangely uncomfortable in that setting. But both of them have said that after a few weeks, they started looking forward to the lessons, not because they got any better at dancing, by their own admission, but because it forced them to be fully present with each other in a way that running a company together rarely allows. Alongside the business pressure, the Gaineses have been quietly moving through a different kind of transition, watching their oldest kids grow up and leave. Chip and Joanna have 5 children: Drake, Ella, Duke, Emmy, and Crew, ranging from their 20s down to elementary school age. In August 2025, Joanna posted on Instagram about saying goodbye to her 2 eldest, Drake and Ella, as they left for their first days away at college. She didn't dress it up. She wrote about being thankful for one last group hug at the farmhouse, and joked about leaning on the family's dogs to help her process what she called a wide range of emotions. It's a small, ordinary kind of heartbreak, but it's the real one. Not a hospital room, not a diagnosis, just the very normal ache of a parent realizing the house is about to get quieter. Joanna has said that becoming a mother again later in life, with the surprise arrival of her youngest son Crew, actually helped her take her foot off the gas for the first time in years. She's credited Chip with constantly reminding her, in her words, to look up, to notice the life happening around her instead of just the next project on the list. Nothing about Chip and Joanna Gaine's story matches the version where a secret illness nearly broke them apart. That story isn't documented anywhere real, and repeating it would mean inventing details about 2 people's private health for the sake of a dramatic headline. But the true version isn't actually less interesting. It's a 22-year marriage that started broke and uncertain, grew into a 9-figure media brand, hit real friction from running a company and a household at the same time, took a public hit over a values-driven casting decision, and is still, by their own account, a work in progress. Joanna has said outright that she doesn't think balance is something achievable in this lifetime, that everyone, including her, is just trying their best. Chip has said something similar, describing their approach to work-life balance as less about achieving it and more about simply unhinging from the idea that perfect balance is even the goal. That's a far less tidy ending than a comeback story built on a hospital bed and a miracle recovery. But it's also a more honest one. Chip and Joanna Gaines haven't been quietly falling apart behind a smiling facade. They've been doing the far less cinematic work of staying married while running a company, taking dance lessons to remember how to be a couple instead of co-workers, absorbing public criticism for standing by people they cast on their own show, and watching their kids grow up faster than either of them expected. No single dramatic event holds this story together. It's built the same way most real marriages are, out of a long string of ordinary, difficult, unremarkable days that two people kept choosing to show up for. If there's a lesson in the actual, documented version of their last few years, it isn't that love conquered a secret crisis. It's smaller and more useful than that. That even the couple who built a career telling America how to fix a broken house still has to do the slower, less photogenic work of maintaining a marriage, one dance lesson, one hard conversation, one goodbye at the farmhouse door at a time.